Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Good360, Creating a Circle of Good with Alison Covington. Today, you are listening using your computer speaker system by default. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to Alison by typing them into the questions pane on the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end. Alison Covington, AM, brought the Good360 charity to Australia, which offers businesses a sustainable and community-focused option to redirect their surplus products to help people and our planet. Their mission is to ensure the excess goods and services that businesses produce every year flow to people in need rather than go into waste. Good360 is Australia's largest online marketplace connecting businesses and unsold brand new goods to Australians in need. Good360 has won a swag of awards, including 2020 Charity of the Year in the Australian Charity Awards and the 2021 Judges' Choice in the Circle Awards, Australia and New Zealand, for their contribution to the circular economy. In 2021, Alison was awarded Western Sydney Woman of the Year, Western Sydney Community Woman of the Year, and NPF Third Sector Awards CEO of the Year. In 2022, Alison was appointed AM in the Queen's Birthday Honours List for her significant service to social, welfare and sustainability programs. I will now hand this over to Alison.
Well, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. It's so lovely to hear more about what Good360 is doing. So I just love to tell you more about it today. So thank you. If you could just go to the next slide for me, please. So first, I'd like to just do an acknowledgement of people. So Australia is on the land with a proud Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island heritage. Good360 Australia celebrates and respects these people as the first Australians. We acknowledge their unique cultural and spiritual relationships to the land and the waters as we all strive for respect and equality. So today I just wanted to tell you more about Good360 and my journey to bring Good360 to Australia. So if we go to the next slide, please. So Good360 here in Australia came about because I read about Good360 operating in the US, and it's just over 10 years ago now, which seems to have just flown by. But I read about Good360 operating in the US, and they had at that time been matching businesses brand new goods to charities. And at that time, they had matched $7 billion, and that's B for billion, not millions, $7 billion worth of brand new goods to over 40,000 charities. And I couldn't understand why they had been operating for over 30 years at that time. And in Australia, we didn't have a service to match brand new goods that wasn't food. So they were matching toys and clothes and furniture, and $7 billion worth of goods had been matched for over 30 years. And what I understood in my business background was that in Australia, sometimes we were a little bit behind trend for international trends, maybe 3-5 years, but not decades. And I couldn't understand why we weren't doing the same here in Australia. We were very good about matching food waste, but we weren't giving businesses the opportunity to be able to match up their brand new goods to Australians in need. And so I wanted to work for that company that was able to match up these fantastic brand new goods and help Australians who needed them most, but there wasn't one here in Australia. So then I couldn't unknow that, and I needed to do something about it. So my mind just kept ticking and thinking, for those 3 decades, for those 30 years, how many Australians had missed out on receiving those brand new goods, and how many businesses had missed out on the opportunity to be able to help Australians in need. And so then I kept talking about it, and my poor husband kept having to listen to it. And I always talk about the time that he was trying to watch The State of Origin, and I just kept talking about it when his beloved team was playing. So he said to me, could you just stop talking about it and do something about it? So we did. So in 2015, we launched Good360 Australia. And in that amount of time, we've now been able to help many Australians. So what is Good360? We're the connectors. So we help charities and schools and societies most vulnerable work with businesses. And what we have found here in Australia is that businesses are incredibly generous. They just really needed a system to be able to match up their generosity with the Australian charities who were incredibly under-resourced and needed access to those beautiful goods to be able to do good here in Australia. So I'm so incredibly proud that we went from talking about it to being able to do something about it, and that businesses were incredibly generous and actually helped me do so much good here in Australia. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. So why do we do it? So we live in a world of plenty, yet millions of people find themselves in need every day. And that's what Good360 does, is we help make them more than enough go around. And I think, what we've seen here in Australia and around the world is that there has been so many disasters since I came up with the idea in 2015. And if you think about when I started Good360, I thought I was helping vulnerable Australians. But since 2015, we have had so many disasters that I had no idea what I was actually setting out to do. So we moved into a drought in 2018, and then we had those catastrophic bushfires in 2019. And then on the back of that, we've had a pandemic that no one would ever have imagined we were here to help. And then we've had floods. And in between that, we've had a mouse plague and cyclones. And we've also had a cost of living crisis, which is what I describe as a silent crisis that people don't actually realize is probably one of the biggest crises we're having here in Australia. Because when you've seen those other crises, whether it's fire or flood, you can see Australia needs help because you can see the fire and you can see the flood, but you can't see this silent cost of living crisis that has helped or hurt more Australians than ever, because these are the Australians that were actually helping in the bushfires and floods. And that's how I describe is that these were the Australians that were giving the $50 to other Australians when times were really challenging, but they themselves are now challenged. And there isn't the funding going around from whether it's government or corporates or the individuals who gave the $50 to help these Australians who now have had 12 interest rate hikes. Their rent's gone up, petrol's gone up, food's gone up. And so more Australians need our help. And businesses are also doing it tough. So the money's just not there to help more Australians. So our job at Good360 is to quietly and unassumingly help all Australians who are doing it a little bit tough. And that's why we describe it that there is a world of plenty, yet millions of people find themselves in need every day. And what is it that we can do to make sure that there is enough to go around? If we can move on to the next slide, please. And so there's an opportunity. And so we did a report with Deloitte Access Economics in 2022 to go, what is the size of that opportunity? And so what we discovered is that there's more than $2.5 billion of brand new goods that go to landfill every year. So these are goods that just didn't sell through, and they're wasted every year for many reasons. But yet we know 1 in 8 Australians live below the line of poverty. And that's 3.3 million people here in our beautiful country that need our help. And this was before the cost of living crisis. So this was before we knew more people were struggling. And so what we have is a society struggling with both need and waste. And so this is what Good360 does, is to talk to businesses to say that, hey, we're here to help. And so many businesses don't know that we're here to help. They're much more familiar with reaching out to charities if they have food waste, but they perhaps don't know that Good360 even exists. And so that's why I'm here to talk to you today, that if you do have product that's sitting idle, or if you know another business that has product that's sitting idle. And when we talk about why it might be idle, it could be that it just didn't sell through, or that it wasn't quite the right color, or there might have been a branding issue with that. So there's many, many reasons why product becomes available. But what we know is that charities are really struggling to get the goods that they need for their society. And then sometimes they're so creative of turning a product that might have been meant for one reason, using it for another reason. So we are really creative in saying to businesses that if you have product, talk to us, because our charities are very creative in how they use your product, but also it's so good for you in terms of brand dilution, is that businesses work with Good360 to lift the profile of your business. And consumers and charities are so grateful for the work that you do to work with them to lift people out of vulnerable situations here in Australia. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. So how do we work? So Good360 is actually a national charity, and we have our warehouse based in Sydney, but we work nationally all across the country. So we have an online marketplace where businesses can donate their goods, and we list the goods on our website for vetted charities to be able to access these goods. So we work with almost 4,000 charities and disadvantaged schools all across the country. So it gives businesses access to charities of all sizes and causes all across the country. These charities and schools register for free to access our website. And importantly, we connect them with brand new goods of businesses that they wouldn't normally be able to make contact with. So many charities that you might know the name of, but many charities and schools that are grassroots would not normally be able to have access to some of Australia's leading brands. And if you think about that for the brands, it's impossible for them to make relationships with 4,000 charities and schools. They just do not have the time or the capabilities to work with that many charities. And then from the distribution point of view, Good360 can either take the goods into our warehouse and we repackage them into quantities that are suitable for our charities, or we also work with our partners to say, hey, they don't have to come into Sydney. They can actually be distributed directly from stores across the country. So we have a program with some of our big retail partners, like Big W and Best and Less, and they can be exited, the goods can be exited directly from their stores. So that's good for environmental kilometres. So from the environmental footprint, we're not moving product around the country that doesn't need to be moved back and forth. But it also builds relationships in local communities. And I think that's one of the benefits, is that it stays where businesses, teams work and live. So we match up the goods in the local store, and the local charities come and pick it up from those local stores, and they make local relationships with those team members. And I think that's probably one of the benefits, is that the store team members get to hear where those goods go back into those local communities and the benefits that it had in that local community. So everything stays local. And then sometimes goods may not have made it to store, and it could still be in distribution centres across the country of our business partners. So then we recommend to them, if it's in the quantity that is suitable for our charities, that they send it directly to our charity members. So we use our logistics and technology to identify charities across the country that could accept those quantities to those charities. And so I think that's also important to understand for a business partner, that we have a network of over 4,000 charities and schools, so we can identify which charities could accept those quantities and then that's suitable for. And so we have a saying that the right goods to the right people at the right time. And so that's really important for charities. And if you think about, for charities, they're often offered goods, or maybe not even offered, they're often given goods when they haven't even asked for these goods. And so they often don't get the choice of what goods they receive. So if you can take yourself back to when disasters happen, often communities and charities receive a lot of goods that they've never actually requested. And so people across Australia, their hearts are breaking for communities, and so they send goods into communities that they may never have asked for. And then the charities are left to actually try and sort these goods, and they may never have requested these goods. And that causes another disaster. So our charities are able to request the goods that they want, so the right goods to the right people at the right time. So that saves them time and money, and it helps them create greater impact to ensure the people who are in their communities are receiving exactly what they need. And if you think of that, that creates a lot of hope and dignity to receive what you need at the time when you're creating, you're having actually quite challenging times, but knowing you're receiving exactly what you need. So the benefit of working with Good360 is that we're ensuring that the donor partner, the business who has beautiful quality goods to give, they're being given to communities who actually really want those goods and value those goods. So we're using our technology and our logistics capabilities to ensure there's an actual really good match of the goods in those communities so that nothing's going to waste and everything's being really valued. And then we close the circle by ensuring that our business partners get impact stories back from our charities. So a beautiful story and some images telling you the benefit that that had into the community. And so that really closes the loop and everybody gets value from that donation. So thank you. So we'll just move on to the next slide. So we do all that great work, but what we've found, as I explained at the beginning, is that the need is just getting bigger. So during COVID, we thought we were incredibly busy. We hadn't seen need that big before. We'd come through bushfires, we'd come through the drought, and then all of a sudden COVID hit and the need was huge. But now it is actually doubled from when we were coming through COVID, which we didn't think we could be any busier than when we were going through COVID. But now, because of the cost of living crisis, as I explained, we have a new vulnerable cohort of people, and we're now supporting 3,000 people every day, which is 2 Australians per minute. So when we get through this webinar, imagine the amount of people that we've actually supported, as I discussed with you, the work that Good360 does, which is just sad, but it's actually not meeting the number of demand that we have for our services. So we're actually not doing as much work as is needed of Good360. So we actually need to do more, and we can't hit the demand that's coming at Good360. So we have around 4,000 charities, but more charities need our support, and we don't have enough funding or enough goods coming to Good360 to meet the need. So if we can get more products donated and more funding donated, we would be able to support more Australians, which is a really sad indication of where we are at the moment with the cost of living crisis. But we're also very aware that we're about to move into a bushfire season, and that the demand will be even higher as well. So we'll have to meet the demand of cost of living plus bushfires coming into the next few months as well. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. So the difference that Good360 makes is that it's a very leveraged donation that Good360 does. So for every $1 Good360 receives in funding, we're able to deliver $20 worth of new goods to Australians in need. So that $1 could deliver a toiletry pack, or $20 provides a clothing wardrobe to people in need, or we also do libraries for schools and for charities. And so it's very leveraged in terms of the work that we do, and we're supporting so many charities and schools across the country. And the benefit of that is that they're able to then reinvest any funding that they receive into program services. And I think that's really important to understand, that across the sector, the charity sector is actually really underfunded at the moment. There's not enough funding to go around. Just like in industry, there's not enough, funding for all industries. Everybody's looking for ways to stretch their budget. So by funding Good360, we're also funding the sector to be able to help them do more work, get more staff, do more program services, build more homes for the homeless, etc. So it's a very good way of making dollars go further. And also it's good for the planet as well, in terms of making sure that any idle product is actually getting a home and being used. So we're really excited to see that, these types of programs are making a real difference in communities all across Australia. Thank you. If we can keep moving along. So as we said, it's very good for people and it's very good for our planet. So we're actually really quite proud of the small amount of time that we have been operating since 2015. We've actually made a real difference in terms of impact here in Australia, but we do actually have very ambitious goals that we set right at the beginning in 2015. We had a 10-year vision for our goals for 2025. And those goals were very ambitious, is that we wanted to do $100 million worth of good, or 100 million items, and we're actually at the moment at 38.4 million items. So we still have a lot of work to do, but we know that the demand has really ramped up in the last year or so. So we're still quite ambitious to make those targets. And in terms of the number of charities, as I said, we're just under 4,000, but we are having charities register every single day, and that's ramping up quite significantly. So we're still very confident that 10,000 charities will join the system by 2025. And also the number of people that we're supporting, as I said, that's 3,000 every day. So we know that we will be reaching the 10 million people by 2025, which is absolutely frightening to know that there is that much need. And that is actually ramping up very rapidly over the course of the last few months and years. But it is lovely to know that businesses in Australia are joining Good360 to provide this support as well. So we thank the businesses that also share our passion to support Australians as well. So if we can move on to the next slide. And then when we talk about our impact to the planet, and many people are just as passionate as we are about our sustainability goals and our ability to basically help the planet as well as helping people. And I think that's one of the areas that I was most passionate about when I started Good360, was that, you know, we didn't want these beautiful new goods that people had produced not to be used before it went back into the planet. It didn't make any sense to me. So many people were so caught up on recycling goods that people had already worn. I couldn't understand, why would we not use the goods that had been manufactured and let them go back into the planet? And so, you know, my goal was to make sure that everything had a life before it went back into the planet. So we're making some great progress there, and almost around $400 million worth of goods have been diverted from landfill. And I think that's really exciting, but we still want to get $1 billion worth of goods into society and make sure they're used. And 148 million of those goods have actually gone through to disasters. So as I spoke about, the bushfires, the floods, those have directly helped Australians who I didn't even think we were going to help when we started Good360. I thought this was all about helping vulnerable Australians, but all of a sudden we're now playing a role in disasters as well. And these are Australians who were once funding our vulnerable charity causes and now found themselves vulnerable as well. So we've been able to help them too. And then we look at the amount of tons that we've diverted from landfill, and, you know, we've still got a lot of work to do there. But we are very proud that Good360 is a charity that helps people, as well as our sustainability goals around the planet as well. And again, you know, we thank so many businesses for being as passionate about that as what we are too. So we'll just move on to the next slide, please. But as we said, we feel like I tell my team, we're a team of around 35 people. We're doing a lot, but we feel like we're a bunch of underachievers as well, because if you look at the addressable market, it's $2.5 billion every year that's available and being sent to landfill. And we're currently doing around 100 million a year. So that's 4% of the addressable market. So we do have a lot of work to do in terms of going after that market, because Australians really need us to do more of that. So I think it's very important that we do go after that market and get more of those goods. And so I think, you know, that's something that, you know, we know the market's there to be had. We know there's more businesses that need to know about Good360 that we can do that. And we unfortunately know so many Australians need us to help them with those usable goods. So there's lots to be done there, but at least we know there's still so much of the available market to go after. And we just need help from businesses to be able to do that. So if we go on to the next slide. So how do we partner with businesses, and how does businesses work with Good360 to achieve these goals? So we can help businesses with product donations. Businesses can help us with fundraising. As I said, the $1 donated to $20 return is a fantastic way to help Good360. We also have businesses come to volunteer, which is a fantastic day. The teams really love coming out and helping to pack the goods, because that gets them out of the office. They see the good that they're doing, they hands-on, enjoy the day as well. And then, of course, advocacy, spread the awareness of what Good360 does. Talk about us in your social media, newsletters, at your conferences, etc. And days like this, where I get the opportunity to talk to businesses, is just fantastic, because, we need donors and funding from the government. We need people to understand that this work costs money. The technology, the logistics, it's all hard work. We can't do what we do without funding to do that. And if we can just move on, please. And why donate goods to Good360? It's to prevent the goods to go for waste. It's obviously to clear any excess slow-moving stock to make way into the warehouses, can reduce storage cost. And as I explained too, we're very conscious about our environmental footprint. So we always look at ways to make sure that it stays in local areas where possible. And it's to reduce any staff handling costs as well, and improve employee and customer engagement. We get so much fantastic feedback from our businesses that we work with about the way that teams and their customers engage with these fantastic stories. And I'm going to show you some of these stories as well that come back from our charities. And I don't think you can, deny these beautiful faces from our charities, the good work that happens in the community. It feels so great to be able to do good with anything that was spare and excess, is a fantastic way to help communities as well. So if we can just move on. And I think also importantly, one of the great things that Good360 does is help you reach so many cause areas. And that was one of the reasons I started Good360, is that I couldn't choose who to help. Because often we want to choose a cause area that aligns with something that might have happened in our lives, or something that we're particularly aligned to. And it was with Good360, I was able to help all the charities and all the cause areas, and I didn't have to choose, because I think having to choose who's the most important was just too hard for me. And then this way I get to help everyone. And this is what some of our businesses have said, is they often, as senior leaders or, the executives of the team, they've made a choice to choose 3 charities or 3 cause areas. And often how their businesses look at that is that, some people align with that, some people totally disengage because it wasn't the cause areas that they liked, and then some don't care either way. But through Good360, then all the cause areas are covered, and then their teams can actually align with the cause areas through that. And so we can help businesses make sure that they don't disengage their teams. And we can make sure that the goods go to the cause areas that their customers and their teams care about. So we work with over 35 cause areas, and as I said, 4,000 charities all around the country, to make sure that we don't have to say no, that you get to say yes to everyone, which I think is really important. But we also do work with some businesses that want it to go to specific areas. So we can also narrow the program focus if that's what you want to do as well. So we'll just move on to the next slide. So as I spoke to you before, we do a lot of work in disaster recovery, and I think it's really important to acknowledge that Australia and the world has a lot more disasters that we're planning for. And so the government and charities are working together to go, how can we be better prepared for this? And then support communities all the way through the disasters and the many years after. And if you want to donate product to be able to help support communities, to prepare, respond, and recover, Good360 is definitely an organisation that can help you with that. And I'll just also point out that I'll make sure that this presentation is available to you afterwards, so that you can read the good work that we do and that the charities on the ground are doing. So we're there to support the charities on the ground with the goods they need, before, during, and after, and it's many years after. And we definitely work with businesses to say, don't rush in the first few days. Most of the organisations need goods for the many months and years after, and that's what we'd like to train businesses to pledge their support up front, but give their goods in the many months and years after, because often sending it in the first few weeks is often more damaging, because the communities just can't take it in those first few weeks. But if we can pledge them and then support them in the many months and years after, that's the most effective way to do disasters. If we can just move on. And then, as I spoke about the cost of living crisis, because it is so silent, we're really encouraging businesses to make pledges and donations now, because we can't get enough goods at the moment to support the amount of Australians who need our help. And it really is Australians who you hadn't imagined need your help. It's your neighbours, it's your work colleagues, it's essential workers, it's everybody. So many people are working 2 jobs. A lot of people are aware that, they might need food, but they do need everyday essential hygiene products, cleaning products, clothing for children who have changed size. Adults might be able to wear last year's clothing, but children can't. They're growing. It's back to school programs. It's so many different ways that we're helping families very discreetly, helping them, because it's very hard for people's dignity to be able to admit that they've now need help when they were always the ones who were doing the helping for the disasters. So if you've got a way of being able to assist, we'd be very grateful to have that conversation with you. If we can move on to the next slide. As I said, it's been very difficult in the cost of living crisis. So, if you've got a way to donate essentials, donate funding, or even just advocate to let people know that the cost of living crisis is actually quite silent, and just be very kind to people who wouldn't normally need help, because we're very fearful of the mental health implications of people at the moment, because of the cost of living crisis. And so we're working with a lot of our charity partners, and especially our schools, because that's where often they're finding that's where parents and families need support. And so we're putting as much support into schools. And I'm not talking about necessarily school supplies. We're providing a lot of actual products there, because they can hear that parents might have, the kettle, the toaster, the lounge, the washing machine, all those things have stopped working. So we're providing the schools with ability to keep families running, because that's where some of the conversations are actually happening in a very discreet way. We're able to help schools top up families and keep those families running in the short term. And if we can just move to the next slide. And one of the other biggest areas we moved into through COVID was the digital divide. And I don't know if many people have actually really understood that we've all become digital. Many of us are working from home. Schooling was happening from home. Schooling continues to happen digitally. Most schools have a BYO device program, which is very expensive for families. If you imagine now in cost of living crisis, families are struggling to put food on the table. As their kids go to school, they have to provide a device, which is many hundreds of dollars, and not affordable for many families. And then data is not affordable for many families. And so that becomes a huge cost and a huge shock to many families, especially if they've got multiple children. How do those children have the ability to get those devices to do their schooling? Some schools in the education department did provide it during COVID, but they stopped after COVID. So these children don't have the ability to be able to do their education. They may, in some circumstances, get a loan device at school, but those devices are not allowed to be taken home. So then they can't do homework, then they get detentions for not doing homework, and then, they sort of fall out of education. So we're doing a big program to really increase the amount of digital access for schooling, plus, people trying to get into the workplace, etc. So we're asking businesses to donate their devices when they refurbish their employees' devices, and we're getting them back into people who don't have access to digital. But it is very frightening that 1 in 4 Australians don't have access to digital, especially in this digital world where you need it often for health appointments. Keeping socially connected to families, that causes mental health issues, education, getting jobs, etc. is a real concern here in Australia, that 1 in 4 Australians don't have access to that. So we're really working with a lot of our business partners to ensure that their refurbished program means that they can donate their computers to Good360 and we'll refurbish them. So if you know of businesses or you are a business that has laptops to donate, we'll definitely put them to good use. And there's been so many frightening stories of what's happening to people who don't have access to basic digital tools and skills. And so I'll just keep moving along. So again, it's more about the digital divide, and the stories here about what it does to equalize people in society. But I think it's just more for you to understand, because I think most people just assume that parents can afford these devices, but as I said before, it's very expensive for parents who are just really struggling to put food on the table. And I'll move along again. And so again, we're just looking at our school program. As I said to you, most people think when we work with schools, it's about school supplies. But what it really is about is these schools understand what's going on in families, and we're providing lots of different goods to these schools to keep these families and students in education so that they feel equal in society, and break the unemployment, sort of generational unemployment, but also make sure that they feel valued and ready for employment. And we've had great success with our school programs. I'll just move along. So working with Good360 is a concept where everybody benefits. So as I've talked before, it's fantastic for businesses if you've got your ESG and CSR programs in place. It's fantastic for communities and government, schools, disadvantaged people and planet. So we really welcome the opportunity to talk to businesses, but also to get the opportunity for businesses just to even know Good360 exists. We've put a lot of work into understanding the difference between people and planet, and how we all work together and how we all collaborate, where charities and schools benefit from Good360 being stronger and building those relationships with businesses and communities and governments to make sure that nothing goes to waste and that we're all here to help each other. So I'll just keep moving along. So the benefits are great for people, planet. It's a national impact, but I also come back to that it also provides local benefits. So we're really passionate about going, hey, we have the benefit of our national vetted charities. We work with national brands, but we really want to make sure that you get that local impact, those local stories. Anything can stay local where possible for an environmental benefit as well. So it's good for business. We really want to make sure that, we keep the costs down where possible, but we also, whilst we're a fairly small number of people, we try to provide like a one-stop solution that makes it very easy for businesses to work with Good360. We're quite nimble and we can customize programs, but we also want to provide you with reports that track your impact so that you can be proud of the work that you're doing with Good360. So we want it to be seamless for you to work with Good360, but we also want to understand that businesses are doing it tough as well. So we want to make sure that you can see that it's really good value for money, and we're very transparent about our reporting as well, so that we can show you that for every dollar that we receive, $20 worth of goods go back into the community. And I think that's very important, that businesses understand that we're transparent as a charity about where our funding goes as well. So if we just move along. So we're very proud that, we work with some fantastic businesses that have trusted us to work with them and distribute their goods into society. And, as we said, there's $2.5 billion worth of goods to be distributed, but many great brands in Australia are already working with Good360, and I'm very proud that they trust us to do good with their products. But as I said, we're only doing $100 million worth of good of that 2.5 billion. So we're still a bunch of underachievers that need to get out there and do a lot more good. So we would really welcome the opportunity for more businesses to come on the journey with Good360 and join our circle of good, and help more Australians that are doing it a bit tough at the moment, and see if we can just lift them up in society. So that's it. If you want to join the Circle of Good, please reach out to Good360 and we'll share this pack with you today and see how we can help out and work together. So thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. Do we have any questions?
Thank you, Alison, for this fantastic presentation. That was really interesting. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see if we've got any questions. There doesn't appear to be any questions at the moment, but as Alison mentioned before, we will send all our participants an email with a copy of the recording, the PowerPoint presentation and other relevant information, along with contact details should you like to get in touch with Good360. So we actually do have a question from Chantal. Thanks for your work on this. Do you accept goods which are branded?
Yes, we do. Just as long as they're not branded with anything sort of gambling type orientated, but we can have a conversation with you about that.
Wonderful. That's a good question, in particular for our members. Lovely. Okay. Well, look, there doesn't appear to be any more questions, so we'll wrap it up for today. But like I mentioned, I'll send out the contact details should anyone have any questions arise over the coming days, and they can contact Good360 directly. So on behalf of Alison Covington from Good360 and APPA, thank you for all our participants in joining us today, and I hope you all have a great afternoon. And thank you once again, Alison.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.